All right, the big news this past week. Price is Right and Let's Make a Deal executive producer Mike Richards has accepted a deal to go to Sony to be one of their big development people. This will have him oversee new projects, develop new projects, and also revitalize a lot of their old properties. With what he's done on Price and Let's Make a Deal, I think this is a really big coup for Sony, who, while Jeopardy has done well, the rest of their offerings have, well, stagnated over the past few years, we'll say.
Yeah, Wheel has, although it's scored in the ratings. But on that note, in specific note of Wheel and Jeopardy, my guess is that because Harry Friedman is getting up there in age, I think you take the young shot guy like Richards, who's still under 40, and eventually I would have to think he's going to be Friedman's successor. I mean, why not bring in a guy that you can already have under contract at that point, and you have somebody who's very established, with known and existing properties, and turn them into something more modern in the cultural relevance part of real society. I mean, it just makes so much sense from an ease perspective, because that way you don't have to hire him in as CBS would try to lock him in a little bit further. But at this point, he's probably looking for, and obviously it is because he accepted more mobility in his career. And why not take that? I mean, these programs are syndicated. I think they have a little bit better of a broader worldwide reach than Price is Right or Let's Make a Deal do, to be honest. And it just is a logical fit. What's the downside of that? I really don't see any. I think they're going to start him on some of the smaller projects, from what I've understood originally. I think that was in the Variety article that came out about a few weeks ago about this. But I think you could see him on the big products in due time.
Right, I could definitely see Mike Richards doing a lot of work for Game Show Network, because right now they are in a massive original burst mode where they're definitely looking to lessen their reliance on Steve Harvey Family Feud. If you remember back to this time last year, like 6 hours of primetime every week, I think, was Harvey Feud. And nowadays, for primetime, it's down to around 3 hours, where you have shows like Common Knowledge, America Says, Cash Cab, and other shows over on overnights, eating away at their reliance of Feud, and for the better, because they've been getting really good ratings. And we'll talk about more about Common Knowledge and America Says later on.
I wonder if the investment relative to views, because Feud still does outdraw those. I mean, not by much, but when you're talking a second-tier cable network like GSN is at this point, I just wonder how much of that they should really do. I love to see innovation, but I mean, strictly from the bottom line of a company or a channel, depending on how you view it, I wonder if it's for the best for them at this moment. As a viewer, obviously, it's great to see some kind of breakup, because that way you can flip and you can see something new that you probably haven't seen before. But it gets more complicated from the perspective of a company, and I'm not sure it's the wisest one. It remains to be seen. I think the fact they're in such expansion mode, like you said, we'll have to see it over a broader sample than what we've been given. And I think that's the critical element that we don't know really either way, and frankly, for that matter, neither would GSM.
Well, it also depends on the ratings that these new shows will get.
Yeah,
Whether
that's what I'm
they're
saying. Kind of a big
comparable,
sample size for them. Yeah.
right? Whether they're going to be comparable to Feud's ratings. I don't have the numbers in front of me for Feud, but we know that Common Knowledge and America Says have been averaging high 400s, low 500s for new episodes and reruns. Best Ever Trivia Show, which is on at 4 p.m., has been averaging, at the very least, 400 to 425 a show.
Yeah,
And
I'm going to
with how
say,
cheap they are to
yeah, I'm going to
produce.
say 600s is around what Feud gets.
600.
And basically, the way we have to view this as an equation is that are these shows being 5/6 or 83% the production cost of Feud, and that really is what's going to determine their lifespan. And do they think there's upward growth from that? Because there's the first step, if it's justifying the relative net cost, and then you talk about the the projected relative net cost of the programming. And if they don't think there's anywhere to expand on the shows, and let's be honest, most, obviously there are exceptions, but most GSN originals don't wind up growing in programming views. The Chase and Lingo were probably some exceptions, the ones that maybe a person who doesn't watch game shows religiously could name, but that's not the rule. I'm just kind of concerned with what I see in a small sample, and obviously I can be proven wrong because we're dealing with volatile data, and GSM would be the first to tell me that. But I'm just concerned with what I see right now. Just when I weighed out everything, and when they look at the cost of production.
It also depends not only on cost, but I'll say this: a friend of our sites, I believe this was Tim Connolly or Chico Alexander from Game Show Newsnet. Tim Connolly with Home Game Entertainment said that with these ratings, they're there, but these are all shows that you don't need to pay a lot of close attention to in order to get or to follow along with. And I think it's the best for GSN nowadays to look for those type of shows.
Well, it's best for anything. I mean, the average consumer has an increasingly shortened attention span. If they don't understand how they can play it in a minute, if that, I mean, that's really high, a minute in television to understand something, then they're going to switch the channel. I mean, I think it's 14 seconds on average you have to get a consumer understanding what your product is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's down from about, 30, 35 seconds usually. It's the soundbite culture. I've said this multiple times. It's the soundbite culture that we live in.
And frankly, that makes sense. I mean, we have technology that reflects that as a decent parallel. We used to wait forever to, let's say, go on the internet and get our dial-up connections going in the 90s. Now we have these smartphones that give everything literally in a click. Why shouldn't our television shows follow suit? I mean,
exactly.
Why not?
And it kind of has to be like that, unless you're like a legacy show, a show that is already known to not the mass populace, but a good chunk of it. Like shows like Wheel, Jeopardy, Feud, Pressure Lock, Pyramid, Card Sharks. And unless you're going for full entertainment value like a Holy Moly, you have to start off hot and start off fast. I think the shows back in the day that would fit nowadays. Remember Quicksilver on USA back in the day?
That's a little bit before I started getting into things. I was born in 92, so...
Okay, well, a show like that, where it's just quick fire, ready to go, that is a type of show that I can see being on Game Show Network immediately, because it doesn't take that long to explain, and you can tune in and just ignore it. Ignore it and just keep it on, and you'll be fine.
I mean, as long as you've got, like, if you splice it into, like, the equivalent of a pie for a show, and you can pick any one segment to understand the concept, it probably would fly these days. And then that's not an indictment on the public, it's a proper response, but that usually is probably something similar to, as long as it's engaging, too, it has to be that. Like, you can't put people to sleep, but as long as you've got that as a baseline, you should be good with the primary step of attracting an audience.
Absolutely. Now, another question that we need to ask about Richard's moving to Sony is, who's going to take over Price and Let's Make a Deal? Now, I have three names here that could take over one or both immediately and plug in, be good to go. Gabby Johnston, who I believe is now the executive producer of Feud. And her, I think they're taping right now. I think Feud's taping right now. And by the time that Feud is done taping, which will be around early August, she could easily fit into the taping of Let's Make a Deal and Price is Right.
Maybe. I mean, Rich Brian DePiero, who has done so many shows, Millionaire, Press Your Luck, Mental Samurai, basically everything you name it, he's done it at this point. Certainly fits in that mold in terms of directors.
Right. Might be a good director, but we're talking,
Yeah, we're
EP
talking
here.
EP. I guess what I'm saying is we have the parallel baseline that people can do multiple shows within a given calendar year because of the flexibility of scheduling of the shows varies.
Mm-hmm. And now another name I have is Jennifer Mullen, who has just wrapped doing Card Sharks, Pressure Luck, and I think she does Match Game, even though that's East Coast.
Well, she's on everything because I believe she's situated in Europe. I don't think that one would happen. She's just a big name for Fremantle everywhere. And that's not to take anything away from her. If anything, it's to her power, honestly. But I don't think they're going to associate someone who's more of a name and a global figurehead to be specific on a show. I think she's above that pay grade, actually.
All right. And then the name that I think will probably take over Price immediately is Mike Richards' co-EP, and that is Evelyn Warfel.
Yeah, I mean I think that makes the most sense. I think they probably would go internal at this point. There's really not, an equivalent to Mike where, we can snatch up this hot guy from Sony. Let's put him on. But yeah, that probably would make the most sense. I don't really have any internal leads from what I've been told, but going upon what I know, I tend to agree with you that she's probably the lead.
Evelyn Warfel for Price. That the question remains, who do we get for deal? Is it going to be somebody from inside, or do they get somebody who was with the show prior to come back and be EP? Because I know Scott Stone was the EP for the first few seasons before Mike Richards took it over. Do you think Scott Stone comes back, or do they give it to somebody like Wayne Brady?
I don't think they'll give it to a host. I mean, not these days. I think they'll just give it to someone internal again. They'll probably just have promotions and so forth. Because when you're talking about a position like this, and you're talking about the very niche and very specific work of game shows, it probably is easiest to just move someone up in the line who's observed, even if they've not done the work necessary to do on a day-to-day or show-to-show, depending on how we view it basis.
Which is true. So we have Price figured out pretty much. Now it's just a matter of figuring out deal, and we'll just have to wait and see what Fremantle comes up with.
Yeah, definitely. And unfortunately, I have no leads at this time, but at this point, probably Price and Deal don't either. So they might have some lists, but they probably don't have a favorite. They might have a preferred hire, but again, you never know.
Right.
Or at least not yet.